It started on a Monday, not the kind of Monday that feels heavy from the rain or tired from the weekend. No. This one felt normal. Bright sun, clear air, busy sidewalks, kids laughing at a bus stop. The kind of morning that gives you no warning, no hint that something irreversible is already being set in motion. In downtown Mayfield, the courthouse stood like it always had, blending into the skyline with its gray face and forgotten history. People came and went, some seeking justice, some trying to survive it. Judge Malcolm Reese had walked that path 1,000 times. Not as a judge today, not in his robe or behind a bench. Today he was just a man checking on an old friend, an attorney handling a sensitive case involving police misconduct. He had come quietly, no press, no staff, just him. Plain suit, steady walk. He wanted to listen, observe. He wanted to be reminded of why he took the bench in the first place, to watch the system up close again, to remember the faces, especially the ones who weren't being heard. And that morning, he had no idea that he would become one of those faces. Across the courthouse lobby, Officer Dana Mercer was stationed on duty. She didn't notice him when he walked in. Or maybe she did, but didn't look too hard. Maybe she saw his skin before she saw the man. That's how it had always been with her. She looked first through fear, then through control. She had been with the force 12 years, enough time to build a reputation, enough time to become untouchable. Complaints didn't stick. Body cams malfunctioned. Her name had shown up on reports, but nothing ever came of it. She knew how to stay just within the line, until she didn't. Dana wasn't afraid of people. She was afraid of losing the illusion that she was above them, and that fear was getting louder.
Inside courtroom 3B, the benches were full. A young black man was on trial for resisting arrest, though the body cam footage told a different story. He had raised his voice. He hadn't raised his hands. Still, the cuffs came fast, the knee on his back even faster. The footage played in silence. The room didn't breathe. Judge Reese watched from the back, arms folded. He didn't flinch. He'd seen worse, but this one felt personal. He didn't know the boy. He didn't know the officer involved. But he knew the system. And he could see where this was going. He could also see Officer Mercer, stationed just outside the door, watching with narrowed eyes. Watching him. To her, he wasn't part of the case. He wasn't anyone she recognized. Just a tall black man in a courtroom, not sitting, not leaving, not smiling. That's all it took. When the session broke for recess, Dana stepped into the room. She walked straight toward him, not to greet, not to ask questions, but to remove. He didn't move. He simply stood, calm, polite, quiet. She told him to leave. He asked her why. She told him again, louder this time. He gently asked if she knew who he was. That was when it happened. She didn't answer. She hit him. Open hand. Clean across the face. In full view of everyone. No resistance. No warning. Just the sound of power, being abused. There was silence. Not just in the room, but in the hallway, the lobby, the air itself. Time paused. People turned. Phones were already recording. The attorneys were frozen. The young man on trial stared, stunned. And Judge Malcolm Reese simply stood there. His eyes met hers. She blinked. For the first time in a long time, she realized, she didn't know who she had just touched. But she would find out. Not with yelling. Not with a fight. Not with a lawsuit. But with truth. And truth doesn't come in shouts. It creeps in slowly, and then breaks everything wide open. That day would not end with her arrest. It would not end with her badge being taken. In fact, nothing happened immediately. She was still in uniform when she walked out. Still holding her head high. Still pretending it didn't matter. But the cameras saw. The people saw. And the man she hit? He had spent 20 years building justice for people just like the one she just tried to erase. He had the patience of a judge. And the memory of a man who'd been waiting for this moment his whole life. The next morning, a clip was circulating. No names. No headlines. Just the footage. A uniformed officer. A black man in a suit. And the slap. It wasn't edited. No one needed to exaggerate it. It spoke for itself. People shared it not with outrage, but with a quiet, exhausted sigh. Because they had seen this before. Different city. Different officer. Same pattern. Only this time, the man wasn't voiceless. This time, he had power. But the question was, would the system still protect her? Or was this the moment the silence would finally break? That's when everything started to unravel. Slowly. Privately. And then very, very publicly. If you're moved by this story already, please take a moment to like, share, and subscribe. It helps us keep telling the stories that matter. By Tuesday morning, it was no longer just a clip. It had a name now. A location. A timestamp. And it had a face. Not just Dana's. His. Judge Malcolm Reese. It took less than 18 hours for someone to recognize him. A former clerk, now an attorney, commented under the video. "That's Judge Reese. I worked for him. One of the fairest men I've ever met." That comment was liked thousands of times. Shared across forums, reshared on local feeds. By noon, it had reached City Hall. And still, no public statement. But behind closed doors, the whispers had started. "Did you see that video? Is it really her? How do we spin this?" At the precinct, Dana sat at her desk. Her badge clipped high. Her voice steady. But the pressure was setting in. Not from guilt. From exposure. She didn't think she had done anything wrong. Not really. In her mind, it had been about control. About respect. About a man stepping out of line. She still didn't see it. Not yet. Because for 12 years, she had been trained not to. Her first complaint came in year 2. Excessive force during a traffic stop. A teenage girl had been pulled from her car by her braids. Dana wrote in the report that the suspect was uncooperative. The girl said she was terrified and trying to show her license. The case was dismissed. Year 4, body cam footage from a house call. A father had called in a welfare check for his autistic son. Dana arrived shouting. Within 2 minutes, she had pulled her weapon. The child was 11. The footage was labeled inconclusive. Year 7, a black schoolteacher walking home from the store. Dana said he matched the description. Pushed him against a wall. No charges were filed against her. And now, year 12. One open hand. In a courtroom. On a judge. It was no longer her word against theirs. Now, it was recorded. And now, it was being watched. Judge Reese stayed quiet for the first 24 hours. Not because he was afraid. Because he had learned that silence could sometimes speak louder. He wanted to see how far the city would let it go before acknowledging what had happened. He wanted to see who would call. Who would apologize. Who would pretend it never happened. No one called. So he began to move. Not with rage. With resolve. He contacted the judicial board. Not to press charges, yet, but to report the incident and request a formal inquiry. He sent the footage to the Civilian Review Board, anonymously, along with 3 complaints made against Officer Dana Mercer in the last 5 years. Cases that had gone cold. Victims who had been ignored. He had names. He had files. He had time. The next day, the mayor's office issued a two-sentence statement. We are aware of the incident involving Officer Mercer and Judge Malcolm Reese. We are reviewing the matter in accordance with city protocol. 2 sentences. No apology. No accountability. The public saw through it. The footage kept spreading. And then, the stories began to surface. People who had been stopped by Dana. People who remembered her badge number. People who had been afraid to speak, until now. One woman posted a thread about being searched in front of her children for a suspicious grocery bag. Another man recalled being handcuffed after asking why he was being detained. Same officer. Same pattern. Same silence. Until now. Back at the precinct, Dana's world was shifting, but only slightly. No one said anything directly. But the shift was there. Her partner was quieter. Her supervisor didn't look her in the eye. She was removed from courthouse duty without explanation. Officially, nothing had changed. Unofficially, the ground beneath her was starting to crack. She got home late that night, turned off her phone, and stared at the ceiling. Not because she felt regret. Because she didn't understand what the problem was. She had followed her instinct. Asserted authority. Controlled the situation. That's what she had always been taught. But now. Now, it felt like the rules had changed. She didn't know yet, that they hadn't changed. They had always been broken. She just couldn't see it, because they had been broken in her favor. Judge Reese didn't want revenge. He wanted truth. But truth has a way of exposing more than just one moment. The more he dug, the more came out. Internal emails. Buried reports. Other officers who had tried to file concerns. One, Officer Mateo Alvarez, had filed a complaint about Dana 3 years earlier. He said she used unnecessary force during a traffic stop and mocked a suspect's accent. His report was labeled insufficient evidence and quietly closed. Now, he was ready to speak again. He reached out to the review board, offering testimony. Others followed. And with every story, the silence around Dana began to fall apart. This wasn't about a slap anymore. This was about a system that had protected the hand long before it struck. And now, for the first time, it was being held to the light. If you're finding this story powerful, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and share this video. It helps these stories be seen, heard, and remembered. By the end of the week, Officer Mercer could no longer ignore it. Her face was on the news. Not the lead story. Not a headline. Just a brief segment buried between updates on local politics and weather alerts. But it was enough. Enough for her neighbors to see. Enough for her niece's classmates to ask questions. Enough for her world to shift, ever so slightly. She told herself it was noise. That people blow things out of proportion. That the media twists everything. She repeated those words like a prayer. Over and over. Hoping that if she said them enough, they'd make the truth go away. But the truth doesn't vanish. It waits. And now, it was waiting for her at every turn. When she went into the station on Friday, her nameplate had been removed from the courthouse duty roster. No explanation. When she asked the watch sergeant why, he told her someone had requested a review of all officers assigned to courtroom security. It wasn't disciplinary, yet. But it was coming. The Civilian Review Board had launched a formal investigation. The mayor's office had received over 4,000 complaints in a span of 48 hours, demanding her suspension, her badge, her apology. And still, Dana said nothing. Not to her superiors. Not to the media. Not even to herself. Because the thing about guilt is, it doesn't always arrive as guilt. Sometimes it arrives as silence. As shame. As denial. She started sleeping with the TV on, just to drown out the noise in her mind. Started leaving early for her shifts and coming home late, not because she had to, but because she didn't know what to do with herself anymore. There were no knocks on her door. But the pressure was there. Constant. Heavy. Invisible. The kind of pressure that doesn't scream. It whispers. And whispers, when they're everywhere, become impossible to block out. Meanwhile, Judge Reese had remained mostly quiet, publicly. He had been invited to give interviews. He declined. Offered a press conference. Declined. But behind the scenes, he was building something. A timeline. He was connecting stories. Victims. Names. People who had never met, never spoken, yet carried the same scar. One woman had been 17 when she was pulled from a car, handcuffed in front of her younger siblings, accused of stealing from a convenience store she had never entered. She remembered the officer. The face. The voice. She remembered the badge number, 5128. Dana's. That woman was now 23. She'd never told anyone the full story before. Until now. Another was a retired school janitor. He had been tackled outside his building while walking home with a bag of groceries. The officer said he matched a suspect description. She never apologized. He never forgot. And the more Judge Reese listened, the more he realized something. This wasn't just about one officer. This was about a culture that had allowed her to thrive. She wasn't just a problem. She was a symptom. And if this system didn't change now, it never would. By the following Monday, the mayor was under pressure to act. Protests had begun, not massive, but steady. Signs outside the courthouse. Flyers handed out downtown. Justice for Judge Reese. Fire Mercer. Power doesn't excuse violence. Still no official response. No disciplinary action. No charges. But the public didn't need permission to remember. And they weren't forgetting. Dana sat in her apartment, lights off, uniform still folded on the kitchen chair. She hadn't slept much. She was beginning to realize the silence wasn't protecting her anymore. She opened her laptop, pulled up the clip, just once. Watched it. Just once. She saw herself, standing tall, jaw tight, hand raised. Then the strike. Then the silence. She paused it. And for the first time, she didn't know what to say. Because seeing it wasn't the same as doing it. Seeing it meant she had to face it. And facing it meant, admitting something she had spent years denying. That maybe, just maybe, she had been part of the problem all along. But admitting is not the same as changing. And changing? That takes time. It also takes loss. And Dana was about to lose more than she ever expected. Because the next person to speak out wasn't a stranger. It was someone from within the department. Her former training officer. He submitted an official statement to Internal Affairs. Said he had witnessed her using excessive force during training. Said he had flagged it. Said nothing ever came of it. The report had been buried. Now, it was evidence. The investigation expanded. Not just into the slap. But into her entire career. And the people who had protected her. Judge Reese sat on a park bench that afternoon, watching two boys chase pigeons across the square. One was white. One was black. They laughed the same way. Ran the same way. Fell the same way. And he wondered, for just a moment, when it started. The shift. The fear. The labeling. When did society teach one of those boys that the other was a threat? When did Dana learn to see blackness as defiance? And how many others had been taught the same thing? He didn't have an answer. But he knew this much. Silence was no longer an option. And this time, he would not let the story fade. If this story is opening your eyes or your heart, please subscribe, like, and share this video. We need your voice to help others hear this one.